bring together the best and the brightest minds in the state of Tennessee, and this will not disappoint. In fact, I'm looking forward to this one more than all of it. So without much further ado, I'm going to just turn it over to you, Stephen, and let you take it.
Thank you, Mike. And I certainly appreciate those kind words, and thank you everyone for being here this afternoon and coming back after lunch to join us. And I think Mike's absolutely right. This is going to be a really good conversation. And then afterwards, we certainly want your participation, and please field some questions for us because I think this is a great topic. So just to kick things off and get things started right away, I'd like to turn to the panel and have them introduce themselves, starting with Kayla. Tell us who you are and what you do.
Sure. So my name is Kayla Miller. I am the Associate State Director for the Tennessee Small Business Development Center Network based out of Murfreesboro, Tennessee. And so I get to work with Stephen and help him make sure that he has everything he needs to help clients in this community.
Excuse me. Hey, everybody. I'm Jim Biggs. I am the Executive Director for Knoxville Entrepreneur Center. So we are, I used to say a business accelerator, but we are really much more than that, a business resource for anybody looking to start or grow a business. We are right down on Market Square in Knoxville, if you're ever down that way, but we actually serve all 16 counties in East Tennessee's development district. So I'm happy to hear from folks who are in some of the rural counties as well and see what we can do to support you there.
Hi, I'm Carla Arbogast, and I'm an industrial and systems engineer at the University of Tennessee and also director of CASRA, which stands for the Center for Advanced Systems Research and Education. We do a lot of work with industry in the manufacturing realm, and we do a lot of work with DOE and DOD on the educational forefront.
Hi, I'm Eric Dobson. I am the managing partner of both the Community Equity Partners Group, which is essentially a multi-city angel group, and the Shelterleaf Venture Fund 2, which is a tech-focused venture fund headquartered here in Knoxville. And I also teach entrepreneurship in the engineering department at UT. So,
good afternoon. I'm Paul Metcalf. I'm from Evansville, Indiana, but I used to run around these parts with some of the people that you probably know in this area, whether it's Oak Ridge or downtown Harriman folks. And I'm glad to be back. I work as a consultant for whoever has the courage to ask me to help them.
My name's, Eric Shue. By trade, I'm an attorney. I was a partner with Denton's law firm. I was one of the largest law firms in the world. Did a lot of entrepreneurial work, a lot of general corporate work, a lot of finance work, but over the last 9-10 years, really focused strongly on the entrepreneurial side. Helped launch a lot of startups all the way from concept stage to exit through private equity. Right now, I'm actually of counsel with Denton's because I've gone in full-time with SafeVac Inc., which is by far the best idea I've ever had come to me as an attorney. So I've taken a brief or taken a leave of absence from my law firm, still of counsel with Denton's, but have come over full-time to help launch a new product out here that is about to hit the market in a couple weeks, so a couple months.
All right. Thank you, panel, for that. And let's feel free to take a little license. I've prepared questions for this discussion, but I hope that we can explore some different type perspectives and take a little rabbit trail running as needed. So let me just start things right off. We're all in the entrepreneurial eco space. What do you feel are the specific resources that are needed in a community to really stimulate entrepreneurialism and support entrepreneurialism?
I guess I can go first. It's interesting is the theory is that if you have smart people and you have rich people, you can create another Silicon Valley. I think that's not true. I will say that I think it's more than that. We have a lot of resources here, obviously great accelerator programs, research universities, national laboratories, we have National Laboratory. We've got so we've got a lot of inherent resources here. But one of the things we need, and I'll speak selfishly, we need a broader investor class here that's willing to stand up and say, I'm an investor, because if companies form here, if they can't find local capital, they die or move. Pure and simple. So if we need a more robust investor class here that's willing to say, it's, again, I call it a bond with the community. If you're willing to take a risk here, we're willing to take a risk on you. Those will not always be successful, as I can prove, but it does have a significant impact, catalytic impact on the community. So
I'm going to back up what Eric said right there. As an attorney that's been in this space, cut my teeth doing a lot of corporate work and finance work, but found a lot of entrepreneurs coming to me about 10 years ago with great ideas, but we were Southern Indiana. There was no private equity. There was no angel investment. I had people come to me time and time again with great ideas, and I could help them get their business started. But we really didn't have that ecosystem that we needed to hand them off to, that could bring that capital in, that knew how to do it, that knew how to help them scale up and launch. That was a lot of what we started working on, both with Paul, and that's how I got to know Mike Epler in Southern Indiana, as we all realized we didn't have that ecosystem, so we had to build it. So we started networking across the southern half of the state, bringing ideas together, creating, I would say, an investor class, because it wasn't there. There were people there with money, and there were people there with ideas, but the people that had the money were not
talking to people with the idea.
we're not talking to the people with the ideas, or we're happy just to sit on the money. So it was about, and a lot of them still are, but it's about finding those people out there in the community that are willing to reinvest, that are willing to mentor, that are willing to help build teams and come together. And once you started to create that environment, I've seen tremendous success with a number of companies, and it continues to build and perpetuate. So I would agree with you 100%, Eric.
Don't forget educational resources too. I mean, we are here to Educational Institute. I mean, we do have some amazing programs here. Entrepreneurship can be taught in the classroom, but it needs to be augmented with real world war stories. And so one of the things I would say is bring successful entrepreneurs and successful investors in to help teach these classes, to give the real world perspective to the classroom. We actually there's a company here in Knoxville called the Marketplace Simulations. They have basically a website that simulates a 3D printable bike company. And so when we can literally put students in there, put them on teams, they design their point of sale, they design their bikes, they design their printing, their warehousing, printing, everything. They do all their finances, and then they compete. And I'd use this in my class, and their final grade is based on their ranking. So it's not about success and getting the job done. No participation trophies allowed. This is number one gets 50 points, number two gets 47 points, number three gets 44 points. And it usually shocks the students. And I keep saying, this is as close as I can get you to a real world entrepreneurial experience in the classroom. And that's something I think is really critical, is going beyond the academic treatment of entrepreneurship and getting into the real world stuff, because as we talked earlier about it, only 1% of companies that seek capital really get it. It starts out about 10%, but most of those fail. So the successful ones, it's a 1%er game. It's not a 5% or a 10% or 50%er game. It's a 1%.
I'd like to add to that, one of the things I look for in a group, and I've spoken at different college campuses, and I like to find people with passion and purpose. And a lot of times we go to a coffee shop and define what it is that they want to do. And then we start building networks around that purpose. I've had some wonderful experiences with major people who have fought against terrible odds. One of them is a young lady my age who graduated high school at the same time, and unfortunately she became a quadriplegic. So after 2 years of trying to figure out how to kill herself, she figured out how to bring purpose to her life. Her name is Johnny Tata, And Johnny Todd is in California. I met her in 2003, and life has never been the same. When you look at what you're doing, why are you doing it? You got to know your why. And we have people in all types of businesses, everything from billionaires to bums. But they can express what it is that scares them, that seems too big, and they need help accomplishing the direction they want to go. And so over coffee, relaxed atmosphere, a lot of times at a university, a college, we get together and sort out, here's who you need to talk to. I really enjoy hearing stories from people. So you got to go in motion. You can't sit there and just twiddle your thumbs and think about what I'd like to be. You've got to go out there and build your network and network your network and get other people involved. And that's what we've done here with Safe Evac, is bring people together. Starting out, there were 4 of us, and now there's over a dozen. But when you put it together, find somebody to talk to that you trust, that you respect, and that will honor your passion to help you reach your purpose.
I'd like to add, I think mentorship is extremely important, and organizations such as yours has done a great job in providing some of those possibilities. We work with a colleague of mine, Floyd Ostrowski, who's very, very much involved with a lot of the entrepreneurship and business startups in the area, and has a passion for helping and mentoring young people that are looking to get into a startup.
Jim, I was just going to ask, would you pick up on that and tell us a little bit about KEC?
Yeah, absolutely. So first, let me suggest this. You mentioned the why of entrepreneurship, and maybe it's important, and maybe this is obvious to everybody in the room except me, but to talk about why we are doing this. We've been sitting here talking about workforce development all day, which maybe doesn't seem like a natural thing for us to be dropped into. Except that, what we've been talking about the whole time is, what do the jobs of the future look like? And how do we train people to be ready for those jobs? Somebody's got to create those jobs, right? We may get lucky every once in a while and end up with a blue oval city at the end of the universe, as I think Mike said or someone said. For the most part, historically, job creation has been the province of entrepreneurship, of businesses that are young and growing rapidly. And in fact, the Kauffman Foundation did a study a few years ago that found that almost all net new job creation comes from firms that are less than 5 years old. So the why is that entrepreneurs and new businesses create the opportunity for the jobs of the future and everything else that propels economic development for the vast majority of the communities that we serve. For us, the what of it is in 3 buckets. So, and we've kind of touched on it. It's capital, it's capabilities, and it's connections, right? So it's those 3 things that entrepreneurs are going to need access to in order for them to be successful. And that's what we try and facilitate at KEC, and then also through our work in building those ecosystems.
Yeah, I think that, what all of you have said is incredibly important. And we talk about supporting the entrepreneurs and the entrepreneurial ecosystems, but also helping those businesses who are going to be part of that ecosystem, your law firms, your accounting firms, your digital marketing firms, and helping those small businesses get started as well so that they can be that support in the areas that the entrepreneurs are not experts in. They're usually experts in the thing that they do and not necessarily in business. So having that well-rounded group and encouraging entrepreneurs in all areas of business development is important, I think, as well.
Yeah, food truck people are still entrepreneurs. I mean,
So
hot dog guy is still an entrepreneur.
I would just like to add that being an entrepreneur doesn't just exist in the business part of industry. It also exists in the university part of education. And our center is an example. We started a program in 2011. Joe Steinbeck, you were one of the original people that met with us at Y12 and brought in a master's degree program that was a fee-based program. It was not state-funded with any dollars or anything. It was created organically. My team over here in the front, we're all self-funded. We have been in existence when we stood up the center with our founder, and I stood it up in 2015, Dr. Rupi Sawhney, who unfortunately we lost to cancer in 2022. But we're still going strong, and what it takes to be successful, whether it's in higher education and having a self-funding position, I've been there 18 years on soft money, it's having a passion for what you do and believing in the product that you have to sell and to know your value, because at the end of the day, we're all in sales.
Right. All good points, very good points. What I heard out of that is obviously, the important things or the important elements to support that ecosystem. Let's talk a little bit about collaboration and the things that we're doing that's working well, and let's field some of the things that we think could be improved from a community perspective to help support entrepreneurialism.
So I'm just going to, this is my own opinion, so don't start throwing stuff at me. But I think that universities, colleges that are, we're all after funding. We have probably not done a very good job on that forefront, but I think we are starting to do a better job in that our center can't be everything to everybody. So, it takes other disciplines, bringing in other disciplines, bringing in the community colleges to talk about what are the needs, what are the problems we're facing, how are we going to deliver what our community needs and make it a better place for all of us, because we all live in each other's backyards.
Yeah, if I can, the entrepreneurs need, aside from money, we all get that, and we've already talked about that. They need happy collisions and they need customers. And so, I would love to see a broader outreach. There are a lot of anchor businesses here in this region that can do pilot projects with these companies. They can support co-working spaces. They could invest if they wish. They could have their own venture arms. I think it would be a fantastic, when we do a pitch competition, we try and fill the room with investors and executives of companies that can actually help these companies. They can do something with them that's more kinetic. And I would love to see a broader, some kind of a reverse pitch kind of thing with all the major companies, even large, even the upper end of the middle-sized businesses, but just solicit, what are your biggest problems? What can we do? What can Jim and his accelerator do to find entrepreneurs that will address those problems? More importantly, if we make sure these companies are willing to, follow through with pilots and things like that.
And I'll say, Eric and I have talked about this. I love the idea of reverse pitch competitions. I love the idea of it.
Yeah.
When you go and talk to some of these companies, Pilot, for example, and you say, will you be willing to get up on stage and share with the world what your biggest problem is? Most of them look at you like you're absolutely crazy. But it's a fun way to try and bring people together and get them connected. Some of you may have read a book by a guy named Brad Feld, who was an entrepreneur and investor and also started a couple of organizations out in Boulder, Colorado. It's called Startup Communities. The thesis of it is actually that you need to put founders first. You need to actually have entrepreneurs lead the entrepreneurial community. And it's something that we have embraced and believe strongly. And I think when you when you adopt that mindset, it becomes a whole lot easier for organizations and communities to collaborate, because now it's not about you, it's about the entrepreneurs that you serve and trying to make sure that they have the resources that they need. So I think that's one of the ways that we've seen silos breaking down over the years, is that the focus is on helping the entrepreneurs become successful. And we are just there to support that work. I will tell you, in the 10 years that I've been doing this, I think that this is actually a very collaborative community. I feel like most of the organizations that we know work really well together, and are very supportive of each other in pursuit of that goal.
Give you an idea of collaboration, there's a mission that I work with, and just to let you know, I'm three areas of interest. One of them is missions, the other is energy, and the third one is agriculture. And if I get one of those, I'm happy. If I get two of them that come together, I'm really happy. So we have this mission that helps women who have been trafficked to get back to a normal life. Collaboration was required to make this happen because it's such a huge problem. We have 211 churches that have come together. We have a product development corporation. We have individual groups that have put together stores to be able to sell goods that the ladies are making, whatever. But you got to have an orchestra leader, and that's what we have at this particular one. And then people that come alongside and say, I like what you're doing. I want to be part of it. How can I help? So that getting together on purpose is really important, and it pays off, especially in this particular area. We even train dogs to be able to go out and sniff and find the pornography that's been hidden in the wall or whatever from the ladies, the kids, whatever pictures have been taken. But there is collaboration par excellence, and we're bringing in additional partners who want to do something to help. And again, we go back to that why. But collaboration is key. And the more we get together, the happier we'll be. Maybe you remember that song from The Parent Trap. Probably not. But Haley Mills sang it originally. And it's true. Get together and collaborate. Good point.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of success with bringing all the entrepreneurial support organizations together in different communities and really spending time learning what everybody does really well. We all have strengths, and when we have clients come in who need a particular skill set or are at a particular stage, sometimes it's better to send them to someone else who can help them more than we can, and then building that support organization that, you know, when that place finds that person, that they send you those clients where you have strengths. So it's that cross collaboration with the common goal that we're all trying to get small businesses to start, grow, and be successful.
I agree. I think, one of the key points there is, a lot of people from the outside may look at entrepreneurship and say, well, that sounds exciting and fun. They don't realize how lonely of a world that can be, and how difficult it is. We say, starting a business isn't as hard as you think. It's much, much harder, and it takes time. I had a client, one time that came to me, and, finally his business made it, and he said, everybody thinks I'm an overnight success, but they don't realize how long that night was. Yeah. And so I think that's one of the keys from the collaboration perspective of not just helping, making it easier, make those connections, but sometimes it's the support of being able to talk to people that have been there before and taken those lumps and taken those no's and just giving you the pep talk to get back up and get back in the ring and go back at it. So I couldn't agree more. Paul here is one of the best collaborators I've ever seen. Paul and I have helped launch a few businesses together that are on the way to being very successful, but it's great to be able, when you need something, to just call Paul and say, hey, I don't know who I need, but I need a guy like this. Or he'll call me and say, what about this? Just talk to this guy. I don't know how many times I've sat down in a coffee shop about to meet with somebody that Paul sets me up with that I have no idea why I'm meeting them, but there's usually a reason. But it's the ability to do that and say, to have a network that you can trust to go to that will help, and that is there, to help that, not just to do it for money, but to help people out and to believe in that passion and to do good.
I want to continue to pull on a thread that I heard there, and that was some discussion between Jim and Eric on the reverse pitch or having a business come in and say, hey, this is what I'm struggling with. Because I think that has impact not only to an entrepreneurial ecosystem, but it also has impact to workforce development as well. So that ties us back into kind of the overarching theme of our conversation today. So what could we do differently? We have some great entrepreneurs and great companies that will take that step with us, but is there something that we could do differently in the way we approach that or the conversation that we have with those companies to help extract that information out?
So yeah, we actually run a program. The acronym is LEAP, L-E-A-P. It's called Local Executive Access Program. It's a terrible name, sorry. But the idea was to try and actually help create business development opportunities for the startups that we work with. And it grew out of a recognition that a lot of the companies that we worked with actually were having great success outside of Knoxville. They were finding, we had one that was the #1 app in the Salesforce app marketplace for 2 years running, and they couldn't get a conversation with any of the big companies in Knoxville who were big Salesforce users. And so it seemed like there was an opportunity there to use our leverage to the extent that we have any at all, to try and create those opportunities and build those bridges. And so LEAP was essentially us going to the big companies and saying, you guys need innovation. We have access to innovation through just, not just KEC, but a network of partners that we have across the state through an organization called Launch Tennessee. We can bring you startups that are relevant to you, but we need to know what you need. And candidly, they're very open to sharing that behind closed doors. They're just not going to go out in front of the world and tell everybody that. So we were able to get them to give us some idea of what they were looking for. And then we were able to go out and source startups from across the state who seemed like they were a good fit, and to actually bring them together. And a number of pilot opportunities came out of that. Some long-term customer relationships came out of it. They're open to doing it, and I think there are ways that you can facilitate that. It's sometimes just harder to do in a very public forum, and a little easier to do if they feel like there is more control and more structure around how that information is being shared.
Good point.
Yeah, there's two syndromes. One's the invented here syndrome, one's the not invented here syndrome. So one of the challenges you've got is some people, literally, I've seen it before, it can't be, it came up in my backyard, it can't be that good. And we got to get past that. It's got to be, we got to flip that mindset to say, let's find out. Let's not judge. Let's find out if there's something there and if we could connect these people. Because literally, I have had people tell me that it's came up and built here, can't be that good, and that's wrong. And we've got world-class companies. I've got a bunch in my portfolio I'll point you to that, like Jim said, didn't have a lot of traction in Knoxville, but are killing it elsewhere. So
I think too, helping these startups develop a network, a strong network, so they have access to the C-suite people and the decision makers, because a lot of times they get intimidated by the no or no callback. And I think that there's a lot of value in helping them on, in that aspect of business development too.
I'd like to jump on that point for a second. One of the things that we don't teach in academia, I can say this because I teach in academia, we don't teach sales. Nobody sells, nobody eats. Companies don't go anywhere without sales. And yet it's
That's
sort of,
always been a dirty word
I
in
know,
academia.
exactly. Sales is a dirty word in academia. That's below us. We're in business, Business thrives because of sales. So, one of the things that I've been pushing the Haslam program for years and years and years to create some kind of, you don't have to call it sales, call it commercialization, call it whatever you want to get past the stigma. But, if you see a successful salesperson, it's poetry in motion. And you watch how well they navigate this. It's brilliant to watch. we don't teach that at all. We just sort of expect them to figure it out. And that's something I think is a real travesty. It's just a hole and a gap, and it's all based on stigma, not logic.
And I think, and no offense to generations, but the younger generation coming up with all the technology and the use of texting and not wanting to take that phone call, not wanting to meet face to face, people buy from people. And it's all about the relationship. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have the very best product in the world, but it does mean that you have access and you have created that relationship and it opens the door for you.
I think from a higher education perspective, that's where the internships and those experiential learning experiences really come into play. I mean, we see with our intern programs, students come in and they don't know how to make a phone call or answer the phone, but then by the time they leave after a semester of working with us, they feel confident. They know how to have an interaction with someone that walks into an office, someone that picks up the phone. So those types of experiences are incredibly important.
Yeah, I guess if we're talking workforce, and you're hitting on this, someone had talked about soft skills earlier today, and one of the things that wasn't mentioned, which I was surprised at because I hear it pretty regularly, was communication and the ability to communicate effectively, whether it's internally with a team or whether it's externally, is something that people struggle with and that arguably got a little bit worse at sort of post-COVID. And I think something that needs to get some love and care as well.
Very good. Switching gears just again, Roane State Community College, our service area is, we cover a lot of rural ground, and yet we have entrepreneurs in this space, and I'm a believer that good ideas can come from anywhere. What are you guys seeing that is impacting the rural community with entrepreneurship? Some successes that you've seen or some programs that are working well right now to make outreach to be inclusive into the rural area and give those folks access?
A lot of focus on agricultural technologies now. There's a venture fund out in Memphis, Ag Tech. So we're starting to see, I think, a realization of the importance of technologies. I mean, University of Tennessee Ag School has its own entrepreneurship program.
They do.
For instance, so does engineering. So the good news is I think there's some important programs that are reaching out. Whether or not they're connecting, I don't know. And that's a fundamental question.
One of the things we're working on in really across the nation is improved technology to provide access to the web.
Yeah, internet's a big problem.
I don't
think.
know how it's going down here, if that's underway, but it certainly does make a huge difference at all grade levels, especially with that dreaded COVID word. So the people need to be connected to be able to understand, get information, communicate. And so we have been able to do that through some systems that are especially in rural communities. And that's what it takes, is a concentrated effort that's affordable, desirable, and worthy.
And quite frankly, sometimes these rural communities can do it themselves if they unlock the power to do it. There's money in a lot of rural communities. They just are slow to invest it in a new idea. We've seen some change in that in southern Indiana. I thought when we started kind of trying to push entrepreneurialism harder there, we'd have to go outside of Indiana to get money. Well, we have, but when you start sitting down and talking to people and really having a conversation, you can start to get those, the wealthier generations that have money to open up their checkbooks and support younger businesses and support entrepreneurs. But it takes a long conversation. That's not one lunch. It's months and months and months of discussing, and you don't go to them and ask for money first. You go to them and ask for help. You build the relationship, you build trust, you get them to believe in what you're doing, because they're not really just investing in their idea, in your idea. They're investing in you. And if they don't believe in you and they don't believe in what you're doing, they're not going to invest. So
or bring their friends in. I was one of the founders of an organization called Appalachian Investors Alliance, and we were working with the Appalachian Regional Commission, we were building small community-sized venture funds all over Appalachia. I think that program now, they wouldn't let me do the for-profit and not-for-profit, so I had to back away, but because it was a not-for-profit organization. But I think there's 16 funds in that, and in communities as small as 25,000 people, which I know is not quote-unquote rural, but that's unknown in venture capital to create pockets of money like that, dedicated pockets of money in communities that small. It was a very successful program, and ARC was tickled to death with it. So,
And I couldn't agree more with the idea of trust and building relationships. The challenge is, and you know this well, like if you're a one-man shop, having a consistent presence in all of those communities is very challenging. And so, building capacity to support then has to be something that communities want to do, and then we can come in and enable that. But if it's not being driven by the community, it's a real challenge to try and bring that into them and have it actually get some traction.
yeah, there seems to be a mindset out there, especially when you're trying to fund a new idea, that everybody wants to be first to be second. Nobody wants to be the first one to put their foot in the door. So finding that person, that champion that will get behind you first is critical. Once you've knocked down that first door, it gets way easier to open door 2, 3, and 4. But finding that leader and finding that champion in a community or for your project or to believe in you or whatever you're doing is, to me, that's the biggest key.
I mean, we've seen that with some of the smaller communities and really with revitalizing main streets. That seems to be something that we see a lot of, is these smaller rural communities that have these what used to be very vibrant town squares and main streets, and you've got all these spaces, but most of the spaces are not accessible for small businesses and entrepreneurs to be able to go into them. There's a lot of renovation work. They've got to get up to code, and you've got to have someone to help make that happen because they don't have the capital. They're not going to get the capital to make those improvements. So someone has to be willing to do that.
It's also, I think, worth remembering that success for entrepreneurs in some of these communities looks very different. So, we do a program that we co-developed with Etsy, the craft platform that many of you may be familiar with, teaching people soup to nuts how to get their products onto the Etsy platform and to start selling them. And that program has actually been really well received in a lot of these rural communities where people are probably already doing that, honestly, in their garage or their basement. Sometimes they're selling it at small craft fairs and they want a bigger audience for the stuff that they're making. For a lot of them, they may make an extra $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a year selling something that they're already doing anyway. This is not the transformative, world-changing money that Eric is looking for when he invests in a company. But if you're in a community where the median income for a family of 4 is $29,000 a year, an extra $4,000 or $5,000 a year is transformative money. That is an incredibly impactful thing for people to be able to do. So sometimes it's just making sure we also have some perspective on what we're trying to accomplish when we're working with entrepreneurs in those communities and what it can mean to them to do even something small like that.
And many of the steps are the same steps that Eric's potential companies will take as
Principles
they
are no different.
progress along the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So a lot of the guidelines are the same, but it's communicating that information to them and supporting them. Plug for TSBDC is that's what we do. That's our mission, is to try to get that information out there into those communities. Very good. So let's talk about developing mentorships. I'm still kind of picking on the companies that have demonstrated success. How can we get them to be role models for these pre-venture companies, these individuals that want to be able to stand up a business? Have you guys had any experience with just maybe not getting the company to tell all and expose all, but what are some of the secret way, or what are some of the successful ways that you guys have utilized to get companies in to share their successes with budding entrepreneurs?
So our ask to companies basically is through, and I think it's important to emphasize how critical, if you're talking about the resources that entrepreneurs need, private sector engagement is one of those, right? That is one of the most important things that you see in successful entrepreneurial communities. And honestly, something that's been lacking a little bit in our region, and I think it's getting better. We're asking for three things from them. One is, the most important thing that you can do for an entrepreneur is to buy their product or service. Second thing is that there are some of these companies that are actually developing what they call corporate venture capital. So they're actually becoming investors in some of these businesses with an eye toward potentially acquiring them and the technology at some point down the road. And then the third piece is that mentorship, right? And I think that mentorship piece, the company needs to see itself as a leader in the community and somebody that gets value from giving back and creating a flywheel that's going to keep the entrepreneurial world going. So the company has to have sort of that mindset that says it's important for us to invest in these people because it adds value to us and it makes this place better for the people that work here in addition to the people in the rest of the community. Some of that I think you can bring into them. Some of that has to come from them. And then some of that is honestly stuff that we're trying to engineer into the next generation of entrepreneurs who become successful big businesses. If they have that expectation all along, it's going to be a lot easier for them to see themselves as mentors and investors when they become the companies that we're looking to ask that from. So I think some of it is just coaching people as they are working with us to understand that that's going to be their responsibility at some point.
Well, I'll tell you, go ahead.
So just to add to even our center, we have a social responsibility pillar. We operate under 5 pillars: research, industry, education, international, and social responsibility. And Jeremy is presently working with undergraduate students on a church project feeding the people that are in need and, underserved, at-risk communities. And I think allowing them as undergrad students to experience that during their education process is invaluable if that's a value that you want to instill in them once they graduate and they become a business owner or, a part of the business community and such.
Good point. Good point. Eric?
Yeah, all my best investors have giving back as one of their top priorities, hands down. I'll tell you, I don't think I've ever met a successful angel investor that didn't have that as a priority. Because you have to understand, these people pay me to go find companies, and then I put them to work. They actually pay me to come work for me. Don't tell them I said that. They will not like to hear that, but they do. They volunteer their time because they want to work with these companies. They want to get involved. They want to do diligence on them, which is just a means of building champions and trust relationships and things like this. So I always jokingly say that, yes, it's investing, but it's not the kind of, filthy lucre corporate rating kind of thing we all think about with venture capital, at least not out here in the real world. It's not. The other thing we do is I'll have my successful portfolio entrepreneurs, the leaders, basically take on a protege. So if we get somebody new or a young one there, I'll connect them to existing ones and set up a sort of a mentor-mentee relationship between those. Because quite frankly, I think we still have 40 companies in our portfolio, adding more daily. So I've got 40 companies I have to be responsive to. And so I have to have investors that'll help and other CEOs. And so it takes a village.
Very good. Very
I
good.
believe the term servant leadership
Absolutely.
is something that applies. And we've got a company called Shoe Carnival that is headquartered up in our area. And the gentleman that was legal counsel as well as head of HR for 22 years has retired now, and he's on LinkedIn. I don't know if you all get on LinkedIn or not, but it's a great source of some interesting people that have capabilities and networks that matter. But that servant leadership is what you were talking about. Someone that does it because it's the right thing, and they want you to rise to the occasion and do better so you can help others do that. But that Escalade is another company that has that same philosophy, and there's lots of them out there. But at the very top, if those individuals in decision-making positions will encourage servant leadership, it will matter.
Very good. Very good. Being mindful of our time and the clock, of course, any closing thoughts that any of you would like to share with the audience with regards to entrepreneurship, community successes?
I think you're very lucky to have this going on today and blessed with the team that has come together to make it happen. Go forth and do likewise if you're not part of this community, because it does matter.
Yeah, and to say, you're absolutely 100% correct. I also say that it's easy to sit back and cheer on the people that are doing this. Hey, you go, that's awesome, do it. It's another thing to get involved. And there are many ways to get involved. You don't have to be an investor to be involved. You can be a mentor. You can be, there's all sorts of things. Might even have skills you can volunteer to help a startup. I mean, there's all sorts of ways to help entrepreneurs become successful. So I just encourage everybody not to just stand on the sidelines and cheer, but to actually find ways of getting involved and supporting these companies. Just buy their products, as Jim said, buy the products.
Yeah.
There's share them on social media. Something that simple helps.
Yeah, everybody steps up to help you when you don't need it, right? Everybody offers you money when you don't need it. It's the people that
Fast
get
way
in
to get
early.
money, don't need it.
Yeah, and those are the people that those entrepreneurs tend to remember and are very thankful for. So,
Very good. Very good. We have a few minutes available for questions, so I'm going to open it up to the audience. Any questions for our panel? We overwhelmed you with knowledge. Christine.
We're just that good.
I just wonder, do you find that having incubator space or maker space or something like that, none of you mentioned a physical location as a component of creating entrepreneurial friendliness, if you will? I just wondered what factor do those types of physical spaces play?
Let
good
me
question.
just say this about that.
Yeah. Bunch of.
And thank you for bringing that up, because that's one of the reasons that a lot of us are here together today, because of those spaces that were provided. They work. And everybody gets together, whether it's weekly or every other week, and we look forward to sharing with each other and checking to see, well, how'd you do this week or last week? How's it go? But that's
Yeah.
spot on.
I would agree. It may not be that you're working there every day, but it's that, every 2-week get together or something along, those are invaluable. I'm not saying the space to work every day isn't incredibly valuable. It is for certain people. But that community that it creates around it, I think, is even far more valuable in my mind.
Yeah, we call those happy collisions, by the way. What we want to find is, you're right, co-working spaces, maker spaces, incubator spaces, things like this. That's where you find these entrepreneurs that sort of collide and they figure out they have commonalities, they have common goals, or they've got common ideas. That is a incredibly important catalyst for this kind of ecosystem formation. That's why the KEC is a place where we find happy collisions. That's exactly why those places exist, and they are critical. And that's another thing I wish that our regional corporates would help support. It's not that much of a stretch. So
I would say that's one of the top reasons we see clients not actually go through with their venture. They have nowhere to test it. They have nowhere to expand and start doing things outside of their home. And it's a critical piece of making sure those types of businesses, the bakers and the people making small items, they need those spaces.
Agreed. I'm faced with it almost every day. You see someone with, and they have the passion and they have the ability, but sometimes it's easy to get pulled in different directions unless you have a place to be purposeful and work with others and be encouraged. Jim, tell us a little bit about some of the experiences that happen at KEC along that line.
Yeah, so unfortunately, we don't, I agree with what you guys have said. We don't have the physical space for people to be working there consistently, but we certainly allow people to come in and do that when they can. As importantly, I think are just creating opportunities for the collisions, the connections, however you want to describe them, to happen. So even if you don't have a single physical space where that can happen, making sure that it is happening consistently somewhere within the community is important. And KEC is one of those. We change the place around on a weekly basis, from event venue to co-working to classroom. But there are other spaces in Knoxville that we can activate as well. The other thing that it does help is as a jumping off point for some people who may not have the resources to be able to get started, right, in a physical location. So, sometimes it's small businesses, like a shared kitchen space that we have in Knoxville called Real Good Kitchen. Sometimes it is for more of the deep tech companies, access to lab space that they might not have, right? So some of the companies that are coming out of Oak Ridge National Lab, out of UT, need access to very expensive equipment. They need access to very expensive space, and they're startups, and they've got a 3 or 4 year runway of trying to even prove this technology is going to work. They're not going to be able to do it without some kind of infrastructure support behind them. And so creating those physical spaces can be a really critical way that you can nurture some of those industries where it'd be almost impossible without it.
Good point. Good point. Any questions from the audience?
Stunned you into silence.
Well, hearing none, we will conclude, and I want to thank the panel. They've done a great job of being the moderator.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
I'd like to thank the panel also for their participation. It was invigorating and exceptional. A couple of housekeeping reminders or notes. I did not understand the purpose of what was being requested of me, so it's on me. If you have not signed in at the front desk, please do sign. I know we checked you in, but we need a signature. It helps us as Roane State for our reports back to the Department of Labor, as well as the Tennessee Bureau of Regents. And if you don't mind doing that, it helps immensely to be able to get that signature on there for verification. All right, for our breakout sessions. Well, we will reconvene back here in 1 hour at 20 after, and the breakouts are Todd White and the power of brewing and distilling. Who's the guide for that? Thank you. Cheryl? Okay, Cheryl will be the guide for that. That is in, let's see here, 1 second. That is in Jaeger 311. Threats to Small Business with Nicholas Christian from the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation is going to be here in O'Brien. We don't need a guide, I don't think. Nuclear Technology at Roane State, and that program is in O'Brien 101, which is down a floor with Dr. Joe Steinbach, who's the guide for Allison. Thank you, Allison. I always appreciate you. Allison and I work together up in Cumberland County, and I always tell her a bad dad joke every day, and it makes my day to watch her laugh like that. And then last but not least, entrepreneurial listening session. If we want to continue this conversation about entrepreneurship, and we also want to look at what are the next steps for our service area for facilitating exactly what this panel has been talking about. And that will be in Dunbar 217, which is right, if you go over to the gymnasium, and it's just to the right through those doors and then on the left. So, and I'm going to that. I'll be guiding with that. So anyways, thank you. Don't forget, on the website, on the last tab is a survey, and please complete the survey, and that helps us immensely with our reporting. Thank you.